can you remind me if you'll be so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, the purple angel, the purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome back to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, the founder of Alzheimer Speaks, and here we are about raising everyone's voice. So if you are listening to our show, you know everyone is welcome. You can call in with questions or comments if you'd like at 323-870-4602. That's 323-870-4602. Or you can just sit and listen to us. That would be fine as well. We're going to have a really interesting conversation because today we are going to be talking with a lovely woman, and her theme for caring with her dad was all about loving him through the journey of dementia, which she walked on with him. But before I introduce Kari to you all, I just want to give a shout out to our listeners. Because of you, your likes, your clicks, your shares, they have had such an impact on our show, and I just can't thank you enough for responding to us the way that you have. If you are living with dementia, if you are caring for a loved one, maybe your professional care partner, or have a business that helps support those on a journey with dementia, a researcher, an advocate, an author, a playwright, a movie director, a musician, we've had you all on, and you are still welcome. Just reach out to me. You can go to alzheimerspeaks.com, and there's a big contact button, and I would love to talk with you about being on the show. Now, I do want to give a shout out to my friend Jennifer Fitzpatrick. She has a wonderful book called Cruising Through Caregiving, and she's doing a virtual book club that's been going on since mid-May, and it will continue until August 28th. And you can find more information on our homepage, alzheimerspeaks.com. You can also find out about the Alzheimer's Disease International Survey that is taking place right now. They want to know what do you think about dementia? And they do a fascinating summary every year, and this will be included in it. And then I have to give a shout out to the MemoryCafeDirectory.com if you are looking for a place for support for your loved one with dementia and you yourself. It's a new peer group, and there are many of them around the country. Go to MemoryCafeDirectory.com. And then Stall Catchers is something you will also find on our homepage, and that is a place where you can actually go in and analyze real data, real Alzheimer's data, and help push the needle forward. And then last, I'm just going to mention, look for very soon, we are putting together a survey for dementia travelers, and I can't wait for this to launch. I think it is going to be extremely helpful to so many people around the world, and hopefully we'll be able to get airports on board to be a little bit more accommodating in different areas that they serve you. Now, again, today our show is going to be about loving them through dementia, and I am so lucky to have with us Kari Logan, who loved her dad through Alzheimer's disease while managing care for him and her mother while working full-time. Now, does that sound like a familiar story to so many of us out there? She tapped two decades of public relations work in Alzheimer's and seniors and caregiving services, and she learned how to navigate Medicare and Medicaid and skilled nursing and transitional care and the whole bundle. And so it's her work as an adult child caregiver that led her to leave her job of 27 years to pursue a career as a writer from the lens of an adult child. So welcome, Kari. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Lori. I'm doing great, and I'm so happy to be here and talk to you and your listeners. And I just want to commend you for everything that you're doing to get the word out on this disease and support families and caregivers. It's so important, and I'm just so grateful to have met you and to be your friend and be part of this wonderful adventure of helping others through this disease.
Well, thank you. And, every one of us has the ability to make a big difference, not only in our loved one's life or, those that we serve through our work, but we can share it with others as well. And I think when we share our stories, it helps push the needle and supports others in their journey, because you can feel so isolated and alone sometimes when you...
That is...
Yep.
Yes,
and
that is so true, and that's really, really a very key point.
Yep. So I want you, if you wouldn't mind, just telling us a little bit first about your own journey with your dad in terms of kind of when and how he got diagnosed, and just so we have a little more feel for that situation.
I'd be happy to. I love talking about my daddy, the great protector and lover of his daughters and his granddaughters, who called him Bop Bop. He was Bop Bop, and he was a strong man, a coach of all sports, a baseball player, basketball player, and he was just our hero. He could fix anything, do anything, and then one day everything started to change, and the first experience was he went out in his car. He was driving to my sister's house in the middle of the night. He just got out of bed and he went down to the garage and got his car, and for some reason he thought he needed to be at my sister's house, and he became lost. He couldn't find her house. He couldn't find his way home, so he fortunately pulled over in a parking lot of a grocery store at like 3 a.m. And when my mom realized he was gone, called me, and we got on that OnStar service in the car and were able to locate him. So that was the first time, and it turned out he was very dehydrated, and that's what happened that kind of sparked it. And then it was kind of downhill from there. He would forget things that we knew he was so familiar with. And it was a very fast progression for my dad, which was good and bad. I mean, the good news is he didn't have to live like that for a long time, but the bad news is we lost him so quickly. And the disease just progressed to the point where he went into nursing care because he could no longer live on his own. And my mom had these incredible physical disabilities. Her mind was sharp as a tack, but she had all these physical disabilities, so she couldn't care for my dad. So we moved him to a care center in regular care, and then within probably just a couple of months, we had to move him to the Alzheimer's unit because that it's funny, I would love to know how many other people have experienced this with their loved ones. It's kind of like the thing that is their strongest trait. Like I referenced my dad as the great protector. So one night I visited him and I left. He walked me the door and I left, and then the door locked and he couldn't get out. He somehow thought I was in danger. And that was the turning point, Lori. He just went kind of off the deep end, being very agitated, and he couldn't protect me. And that was the night that he went into the Alzheimer's unit. So it was quite a night. And from there, he remained on the unit, and my sister and I became very involved in his care and loved him through those days in the memory care unit and supported his caregivers in any way that we could until finally in April of 2012, I walked in one day, said hi to him, and he looked at me, and I knew he didn't know who I was, and it was the first time that happened. And my heart fell, and he looked at me, and he kept looking at me, and then he started to cry, and he said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "What, Dad? What?" And I realized at that moment that he didn't know who I was. And that man, from that day forward, he stopped eating. And
Wow.
again, we call it his last great act of protection. He didn't want to forget his daughters and his granddaughters, his family.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, maybe it was just a coincidence, but he didn't live much longer after that. So lots of heart hurting experiences, but also lots of heartwarming experiences through my journey with my dad.
Wow. Your story is almost total opposite of mine because my mom lived 30 years. And so, again, this disease is so bizarre. You just don't know. What did you find were some of the most challenging moments in your caregiving experience?
Well, I call it you don't know what you don't know. It's one of the things that prompted me to really become provide education and support to adult children, because I didn't know what I didn't know. So all of a sudden, you're thrown all these things are thrown at you: managing care, finding a way to pay for it. Are there veterans benefits that will help pay for care? How am I going to pay for my mom? Because now she has to go into a care center in skilled nursing care. So you've got 2 monthly payments for that. And so I didn't know what to do. And so I had to learn. I had to teach myself. So that's when I went back to looking back at my career in public relations and all of the work and the writing I did, the PR I did in that industry with the Alzheimer's Association, with the Parkinson's Foundation, Metro AAA, a great organization here in Minnesota that helps so many people find resources and answers. So I tapped my network. I even had a very good friend and former client who owned Alzheimer's care homes. So I called Jane. I'm like, Jane, I don't know what to do. And she jumped in and helped me. My friend Deborah Dolan, who was a senior care manager, I called Deborah, and she jumped in and helped. And so that was the most challenging, is finding the resources I needed. I wanted so desperately to take good care of my parents and give them the best I could with the resources we had. And so I spent a lot of time researching, calling, and trying to figure all of that out, and often feeling lonely, alone, and unsupported. Those of you who are adult children out there know that, suddenly your parent can't talk to, for example, the Medicare people anymore. So, but they won't talk to you. And so how do you do that? How do you get the information you need? And that's the kind of stuff that was always really, really challenging. I thought, don't you understand what I'm going through right now?
Yeah, exactly. It's so draining, and none of it is easy to maneuver through. I mean, it's just like this minutia. No. You're deep into the quicksand and trying to figure out how you're going to get out of it. And yeah, it's not.
Yeah, and at the same time, you're trying to do a good job at your work. You're trying to be there for your kids. You're trying to go to their choir concerts and other activities that they're in and be supportive. But every time I left my dad in the nursing home, in the care center, my heart remained. It remained there at his bed, and I just couldn't. I couldn't let it go.
Yep.
So then I started to try to think of ways that I could do that and I could relax a little bit. And I've written about those kinds of things too.
Sure. Now, we're talking about kind of the struggles and stuff. What about some of the most rewarding, sides of this disease? Because I think so many people think there isn't one.
Right. Well, and it's funny, Lori, because so many of my friends who know me well and cared deeply about me, and they wanted me to have breaks, and they would say, well, a couple of them, their parents had passed away, just had a heart attack, and they were gone, and they said, you must feel so envious or so cheated because you have to go on this long you're going through all of this with your dad, and we didn't have to do that. And it was interesting because without hesitation, I said, you know what, I would choose this in a minute. As awful as it was, there were some amazing moments with my dad that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I knew he loved me. He told me every time I saw him, this man was a gentle giant. He would hug me. He would tear up when he said goodbye. I love you. He was wonderful that way. But I would have had these times that I had with him where I could sit and care for him and give back to him what he gave to me, because he gave me so much love and support and being there for me. And so now this was my opportunity to give that back to him. And I did it in a lot of ways that I found very rewarding for both of us. And so I always preach this, just amid the chaos, take a breath and make a list, write down all of these good things that are happening, because they're hard to see in light at all. But I had time to sit with him, talk to him, thank him. My friend I mentioned earlier, who owns the Alzheimer's care home, she introduced me to essential oils for people with Alzheimer's disease. And I used essential oils on my dad, and it was a miracle, the things that happened when I used those oils. And then it became very medicinal for me, using them and taking in those scents. And so those are the wonderful moments, knowing that after my dad died, I knew that I did everything in my power to care for him and love him through this disease, as he would have done for me. And so I sleep well at night knowing he's in a better place, and he knows that I was there for him.
Well, one of the things that I liked what you really noticed those moments. But I think one of the traps of giving care to somebody else, especially when we have been set up to believe that that this is going to be a struggle, this is going to be a burden. We focus on looking on those things instead of the joyful moments, instead of the peacefulness, instead of the silliness. And so I think one of the things that we really have to get people to do is what I call consciously care and look for those moments, because you're only going to find what you're looking for. I had, unlike your friend who said, in terms of the time frame and stuff, I actually had two friends, both in senior housing, that said, "Oh my gosh, I'm kind of jealous of you." And I said, "Why?" My mom's got dementia, my dad's got brain cancer, and they both said, "Because you have such beautiful stories. My parents are healthy. I don't have those stories. I don't know them that well. You know both your parents so intimately, and that is just such a gift, to be able to have that closeness, and it's just it's something I think that we forget to really appreciate. How did you go about kind of preserving his dignity? Because I think that that's something a lot of people talk about and struggle with in terms of the journey.
Yeah, I was just, the most important thing that I did, Lori, was just to be cognizant of it. I tried. It didn't take long because I took a lot of offense to people who were, for example, caregivers, people at the care center who would make the point to look at me and talk to me and ask me, well, what would he like to do about this? Or what would he, what does he think? What would you like him to do? And I said, you know what? My dad is sitting right there. Please talk to him. Because here's the thing. I didn't know what he could hear, feel, think. That's the thing about this disease. Everything we've learned is they're not aware, but what if they are? What if they are aware? What if this man who was a teacher and taught class What if he was sitting there being disrespected and wasn't capable of saying something? So that's what I did. And then I would I was around a lot. I would go to the care center, and I would be there a lot and have a presence. And I would talk to people, and I wanted to make sure that people knew that I was watching. But I also gave back to them, which is one of my key messages in the writing that I do, is really to say, it's a two-way street. These people work hard hours. They do a lot of physical labor, helping people with Alzheimer's disease. So you got to be grateful for what they're doing too. And when you work together, it becomes a really wonderful thing because you both feel respected. You're able to talk to them. They want to talk to you because you're kind and you're grateful. And then I would tell them all the things about my dad. And one of the articles I wrote and posted on my LinkedIn page, I would love for anybody to connect with me there to see those. One of the things that I wrote about was, this is the man, I call it. I mean, this is the man that I described to you earlier. And I so desperately wanted people to know him as that man and not this man who was void of expression and, emotion. And so those are some things that I did, and I wrote about it. I just started writing about my dad, and I honor him now by passing those stories on to his grandchildren. And I feel like that's how I preserved his dignity in a big way.
Well, that's, you're teaching your kids such fabulous lessons by caring, for him and setting that example. And because it could hit any of us at any time. And that's one thing I think society doesn't quite appreciate enough, that, this is way more common than people have any clue of at all. And it's not just the old, it's all ages. And we've really got to start looking at this very seriously. I mean, when I remember going out and speaking and doing some training, and I'd say, I met somebody in their 50s or their 40s, and people would be aghast. And now we're seeing people in their 30s and their 20s, and even their teens. Again, we're not seeing a lot of it, but it is happening. It is starting to be diagnosed. So this isn't about old age. This is a chronic illness that needs research, and it needs support from its community.
It does, and I can't tell you, and my daughter's listening right now. Hi, honey. My daughter, Britt, she so often, as an adult now, looking back at that time when I was caring for Bop, that she learned from me. She watched me model love and care in a way that, she'd always felt it from me, but she actually witnessed it and watched it, and she pulled from that experience and utilizes it in her everyday life, in her work. She also works in public relations and is a writer, and she writes about her grandfather. She she started to volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association in Chicago and is in a leadership role there. And because of what she witnessed, and she wants to help other families now. So it's you never know what you're doing. Something that seems so hard, if you stop and look at the good things, and sometimes it takes time to see it manifest. But now to watch my daughter and what she's doing to help other people and be an advocate and a spokesperson for Alzheimer's it makes me so proud. And my dad would be so proud to know that we are carrying on his legacy in so many ways and helping other people, because that's a core value of our family, is helping other people and being there for our friends and family who need us. So now we've been able to have all kinds of friends that we maybe haven't even met yet that we're helping, and that's why I'm so honored to be here today and hope that I can shed some light on some things for all of you who are listening.
Well, that's wonderful. I know my daughter's kind of stepped into that role too. The last thing I think she wanted to be like was her mother, and now she works in memory care as an activities coordinator.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she loves her job. She loves her people, and it's just nice to see that compassion, come out in your kids and stuff. It's really a very, very cool thing.
It is.
Can you kind of expand on some of the lessons that you learned from your caregiving experience that might be helpful for others to know? Do you have some key thoughts on that?
I do, Lori. The way that I describe it is lead with your love and go with your gut. Because you're going to feel like, oh, did I make the right decision? How could I do that? There was one point where I had to bring my dad to another facility because his medications were not in sync, and he was becoming aggressive. My kind, gentle giant was becoming aggressive, and it was the most crazy, out-of-character thing for him. But, and then I felt very guilty about that. I thought, is this right? Am I doing it right? And I realized that I couldn't. I really was trying to make a decision. My decision was made with my gut. My gut feeling was I had to do this for him, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to question it. So, Kari, you went with your gut. Your gut told you needed to do this. And your love told you that it's going to be okay because you were doing your best. So that's something that I learned. The other thing is that, again, being present. There are wonderful people out there who serve people with Alzheimer's in these memory care units, and they do their very best every day. And so but I did experience some things that were really a problem for me because I walked in and I saw this man. I saw my dad, who was this huge sports hero, and he was playing this game on the memory care unit that where you had a little noodle and balloons, and they were hitting him around, and it just hit me in the wrong way because I was so humiliated for him. And so I think that with that respect and kindness and gratitude for what people are doing, there also comes a need to advocate, and that it's okay to say, this isn't working for me because my dad, here's why, because my dad was a huge athlete, and it's just hard for me to watch this. And then they were respectful of that, and then they did other activities when he was present. So that's a big thing.
And I'm going to just comment on that because I think it's something that we all struggle with. I know I struggled with it too. But one of the things is that I have found through my, 35-year journey, in dementia right now is that for me anyways, I found moments like that. My ego was getting in the way because my mom wasn't who she used to be. And I really had to learn to focus on was she present? Was she focused? Was she enjoying it? And sometimes I focused. And I'll admit I got angry because it was like, no, that's not who I want to remember or how I want to remember, because I was looking at it in a effect that this wasn't respectful or it wasn't whatever. I had this situation. I'll use the example of my own family, where my the nursing home, my mom dressed up. They had like a red hats lady day, and they had makeup, and
Uh-huh.
they had feather boas, and they had red hats, and all the things. And my brother's like, that is so disrespectful. That is ridiculous. I'm like, look at the smile on mom's face. Mom is having a
Yeah,
ball.
yeah,
Mom is having a
yeah.
ball. And so one of the things I think, and again, maybe your dad wasn't enjoying it. I'm not judging. I'm just saying I think as care partners sometimes we have to step back and go, who are we trying to protect here? In what are we
Right. And
trying
you
to
know what,
protect?
Lori? You're so right. And just you saying that makes me think maybe to my dad, who was, I mean, I just have to share a quick story that will help you understand this. So my dad was an amazing baseball player. He played Legion ball in southern Minnesota. The day that the scouts from the major leagues were coming to scout his game, he had to report to the Army. He was drafted and had to report to the Army, so they didn't see him play ball. His coach and every player on that team said that my dad would have been drafted to the major leagues that day had he been there. That's how good he was.
Mhm.
And so for me, that story, that tape of that story played in my head when I saw that. But now that you say that, I'm thinking maybe to my dad at that moment, he was playing baseball. And he felt
Yep.
happy about it, that he was able to hit a ball, even though it was a balloon, but something that was so innate and so part of his DNA, he was able to do it. So
Mhm.
that's it. I thank you for helping me realize that was probably something that he enjoyed.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and
but
one of the things is they go back. A lot of them go back in time. And so he might have
yeah,
been a small boy just playing outside, depending on where he was at stage wise, and
yeah,
or or not. He might have seen it like you just described. I mean, we don't really know, but I think looking at really seriously looking at their nonverbal signs, and of course their verbal signs as well. But where are they? Are they peaceful? Are they joyful? Are they happy? Are they content?
right,
Or
right.
are they looking frustrated and mad and angry and antsy? And
Mhm.
sometimes we don't look at that because our emotions are so dang strong and they run really
They
deep,
are.
and so it's really easy just to go. I mean, and I've gone off on those a zillion times, when I was caring for my mom
I know.
and things. it's
I
it's
know.
it's normal because we are now the protectors, and they protected us all of our
We
lives, and
are.
but we have to learn to figure out what are we protecting. Is it them or is it our memory? And if it's
Right.
our memory, this is still an opportunity to create new memories and relive that because
It
for
is.
me for me what I found, and it sounds like you have through your journey, when your dad was happy and content and loving. I mean, those are the things that melt your heart, and it doesn't make any difference what they look like because it's all about how they made you
Right.
feel in
That's
that.
right.
So,
And there was another moment that I think is really important to bring up because I don't know if this is a universal thing or if it was just my dad. So my husband's mother and my dad grew up in the same town. So they knew each other. And before my husband and I even found each other, they knew each other. And when they would get together, they would sit at the dining room table and they would talk about the past. And they would talk, we'd say, listen to Dad, it's like he doesn't even have Alzheimer's. They'd say, oh, remember Lefty Johnson and he lived on this street and remember we used to play and, oh, yes, Norm, I remember that. And they would go on and it was remarkable. And so it's worth a test if you know people who your loved one was really close to and they were young and you can get them together. I find there was so much joy in those moments that day for my dad
well, and
because I
and
think
that
he
is
just was really,
it's so
yeah,
true, those reminiscing moments. Like my parents would go out. My dad had brain cancer. My mom had dementia, and they would go out for lunch or whatever, and nobody thought anything was wrong. Well, somebody was picking my folks up, and I would go over and make sure that they were groomed properly. My dad had enough money, for lunch or whatever the heck they were going to do. And then they would come home and they would always go talk about old times. And so then all of a sudden, their friends are inviting them, come on down to Texas with us on vacation. And my folks get back, oh yeah, we're going to, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way they could maneuver an airport or pack or travel. And then I would have to undo all that. But that taught me, and I didn't even realize it because I was in my daughter protective mode. I want them to, be dignified but I was hiding the disease. And that really wasn't fair to their friends either, because then they couldn't help on other levels. And we all know how good it feels to help somebody. And so then I would get really mad at their friends. What did you do that? And they're like, well, we didn't know. They seem fine.
Right.
But those old memories are so strong. Now, you had mentioned that you used aromatherapy and things, and how that also benefited you, which I think is wonderful. And now, did you hire a geriatric care manager or anything to assist you?
I did. Yeah, and a lot of people don't even know that they exist. The only reason I did is because Deborah was a client of mine. So she came to my company to help promote her business and get the word out to adult children that she was available to help. And so, at the time when I worked with her, I was certainly sensitive to her clients and what they were going through. But then when I suddenly found myself in that position, I felt very lucky to have made that connection and knew it was there. And I called her, and she was a godsend. I mean, not only just taking some of the burden off of me, but and my sister, but she also has all these resources. So some of the resources that I mentioned before, like here in Minnesota, the Senior Linkage Line and these organizations that can help direct you. I had my own personal Senior Linkage Line. So my dad would go into the hospital, and then he couldn't go back, and it was kind of more of my mom a little bit because of the physical stuff. But when Deborah would arrange transitional care, she's the person who told me that you're best to have your dad stay in a care center in his community because that's really important to him. So he might know people in the care center when he's there. My mom just wanted the nice-looking one with the pretty drapes and all that kind of stuff. So she was, unfortunately, in another care center. But Deborah helped me through all of that and all those decisions. She checked to see if my dad had veterans benefits that could help me pay for his care. She took care of his all of his Medicare Part D, like all of his prescription drug plans and his health insurance, making sure she would shop around and get me the best deal every time it was up for renewal. And she was there for moral support. She was my advocate if there were questions in the care center and I didn't know even the questions to ask. I would bring her in, and she would talk to the social worker. She would talk to the staff. My friend Jane is another person I brought in. She ended up coming in and doing a whole essential oils training in my dad's care center, so other caregivers and families could learn about this amazing thing. So just having someone in your court, like as a geriatric care manager, was such a blessing. And depending on where you live, I mean, I didn't think that it was that unaffordable. I thought it was really quite affordable and worth every penny because of the burden it took off me. There's a publication called Minnesota Good Age Magazine, and I wrote an article that if you go online and you go to Minnesota Good Age and Google my name, you'll find an article on hiring a geriatric care manager, and that people might find helpful.
Oh, sure. Well, that's wonderful because people, like I said, geriatric care manager, people don't have a clue what the heck that was at all. And then to have friends come in and help support and things, we never know who has what talents or skills until you talk about what it is you need. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't know you did that, and
right.
I know on my journey I had so many people step up and do things. One was a a singer and a videographer that came in and videotaped my mom for some kind of music therapy. And those are like the most precious moments, and they gave that to me as a gift. And I've got that up on YouTube, and some of those have like 65,000 hits on them. But they're just those little precious moments that we forget. How did your caregiver experience lead you to kind of change your career path? Did it affect that at all?
It sure did. And here's the thing, my parents were both teachers, okay? They taught all of their entire career. And my dad was really a key player in my making this decision. What I didn't know, as I was loving my dad through Alzheimer's and loving my mom through her disabilities, I didn't realize that they were preparing me. They were continuing to teach. They were teaching me what I needed to know to do what I'm doing today. And sometimes those lessons were hard, and I did pass some. I failed some. I would have gotten a bad report card in some situations, but I learned what I needed to know to be able to go on and do what I'm doing. So that, I worked in the senior market, and I'd written about Alzheimer's. I helped bring Alzheimer's out of the closet here in Minnesota and position it as a family disease. I couldn't get the media to cover it because, that's older people and people are forgetful. Like, no, you don't understand. People's whole families, their lives are turned upside down. There are children whose grandparents don't even know who they are anymore. There are adult children who are missing so many days at work because they have to be there to care for their parents. This is a family disease. And so there were so many times I wrote about it and did it, but I never, until you experience it, how ironic that I produced a 1-hour live television special on Alzheimer's that aired across the country. But then years later, my dad got the disease, and suddenly my whole life changed. And so I really feel like, the combination of my work I'd always done, but really the caregiving experience made me realize, and people coming to me, my adult children, friends, were coming to me and saying, this is what I'm seeing. I became this resource all of a sudden, like, you did this, you understand this. And I'd be like, yeah, here's what you need to do. If you want Medicare to pay for that transitional care, you got to make sure they're admitted to the hospital and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, I am so called to do this and help other people in this way that I am in little snippets. And now it launched my new chapter of my career about writing about it and supporting adult children and educating them, working with organizations that manage and run care homes, getting them the information they need to provide to adult children so they don't feel alone and don't feel isolated. It's been incredible. I've never felt so where I'm supposed to be in my whole life, and I've had a good career. I had 6 years working in local television as a producer and a TV news assignment editor. I worked in a bigger agency for 27 years doing PR and loving it. But I am home now. I am in a place now where I can do this every day, and it feels so good to me. And so many people said, oh, you need to talk to Lori LeDay. And there's all these other people like you, Lori, who share my mission. And so together, I really hope that we can continue to help support, educate, and just make people feel they're not alone. You can get through this. You can love through this disease and look back and think, you know what, I did everything I can. I have no regrets.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say, you feel at home. This is where you're supposed to be. That is exactly how I feel too. And when I go back and you look at the dots of your life, they just take you right here. And it's like, I feel really confident. This is what I was born to do. And it
Yeah.
wasn't on my radar, nothing I thought of ever doing. It just happened, yet it feels so natural, and there's so much synergy with people in need, and you get you link up with those people of passion, and you can just really move mountains. Well, this has been just a fascinating conversation, Kari. I can't thank you enough for being on the show and sharing your story. Now, I know people can get to you through LinkedIn, and I've got that link for them on the radio page or the blog, wherever they're looking. And they can also get to your website, too, editbeinc.com. And so if you're looking for a writer, especially in healthcare with dementia, she would be wonderful. But she's got, as you heard, many, many other skill sets as well. So I just, I can't thank you enough for your time today. Anything else that you want to add that we might have missed?
I just want to wish everyone who, whether you're caring for people, or you're a professional caregiver, you're a family caregiver, just know that there are people out here who you're not alone. That's my biggest wish for all of you, is to know that you're not alone, and that this is a really horrible disease, but you can live and love through it and feel at the end of that journey that it was a life well lived. And so I leave you with that, and I wish everyone all the best and in your own personal journey.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. That's a beautiful, beautiful way to wrap up. And I just love this title, Loving Them Through Dementia, because it's just such a healthy way to go through it. And as we know, when we love somebody, that doesn't mean everything's perfect all the time. It just means you continue to be
so
there.
Right.
And sometimes it's us that's not perfect, it's them. But learning to kind of let go of that guilt and that inner self-critic that kind of beats us up in this caring journey. There's just so many lessons to learn, and and things that we need to release to move forward, to really have more intimate, engaged, joyful moments. And if we can look for those things, we will find them. So again, thank you so much, everyone. Kari, it was a great show, and I want to thank our listeners, and I hope that you like and click and share this episode with all those in need, and many in your sphere probably don't even know that they need this, because a lot of people don't even identify as a caregiver or a care partner, care companion. They say, hey, I'm a wife, I'm a husband, I'm a daughter, I'm a son, I'm a friend. And so, we need to push this message out, because not only does it help those dealing with Alzheimer's, but, the things that Kari talked about are applicable in all of our life. And they've got beautiful messages to make each and every one of us a better human being. So thank you so much. In the meantime, feel free to check out alzheimerspeaks.com, where you can get a lot of other resources. You might want to go to our initiations and projects page. There's information on becoming dementia friendly, the Purple Angel Project, which is a symbol you can use to help raise awareness. There's our wonderful Dementia Chat interviews, where I facilitate a conversation with people with dementia, and they tell us what they really want. Our last conversation we had was about building communities, dementia-friendly communities. We just did another one on pain and how that affects them. So there's all kinds of resources there. Please don't hesitate to reach out and grab them. Have a wonderful 4th of July, and we'll talk very soon. Bye now.
Well, hi, I'm Lori LeBay, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.